You already did that. You're behind my back. You know, all that support.
All right, so we're Boundless Expectations. So who is Boundless Expectations, or BEI? We were started by parents who actually, I'll take that back even a little further. I was working with the Disability Advocacy Institute, which was in California, Maryland. And we found the person who started the company wanted to look for a career change. But we had had several clients. We did advocacy. And as an advocate, one of the things I noticed is that we also needed somewhere for students who were not getting the specialized tutoring services that they needed in the schools, because schools were not necessarily aware of the things that students with dyslexia needed at that time. So we started specialized tutoring at DAI, Disability Advocacy Institute. One of the issues that we had was that we turned a lot of parents away because they were not able to afford our services, whether for advocacy or tutoring. So we decided to create a nonprofit. When that was going away, my husband and I decided we were going to start a nonprofit. So we found many parents who were also, a few parents actually, who had been through issues, whether it was traumatic brain injury or other disabilities, that we would start this nonprofit. And we just got our status on Leap Day, just this past February. So we are officially a nonprofit now. We opened our doors off Fenwick Street in Leonardtown in November 1st. And our board consists of 5 board members. Staff, we have 6 uniquely qualified tutors and or advocates, and we just are looking to hire 2 more advocates now. And that's basically, we have a lot. Advocacy is one of those things that takes so much time. And being an advocate and the director is very hard now. So we are really trying to train other people to be able to expand what we're doing as well. And I'll tell you a little bit about that when we get there. So who does BEI help? Well, if you take a look at students who have disabilities, and this is a national number, 5.9 million. These are students who have disabilities. We see that autism is about 7%, emotional disturbance 6%, intellectual disability, which used to be called mental retardation, is about 8%. Other health impairments like ADHD, epilepsy, there are a bunch of other health impairments, and that's about 13%. Speech and language, we get a little bit bigger piece of the pie, and we're looking at about 19%, and specific learning disabilities is at 42%. Most of the clients, we serve all of these clients. These are all of who we help. And I will tell you, in our specific learning disabilities section, 81% of that blue section is predominantly filled with students who have dyslexia. And I'll give you a little bit more description about that in just a moment, but that's who we predominantly service with our specialized tutoring. That is what we started with, though we do many other things now as well. And I will also give you a little, just some information also. Speech and language impairment, many of our students also have speech and language impairments. They started off with speech and language impairments as young children. Okay, so who has dyslexia? Well, 1 in 5 is what we have seen through a couple of studies now. Some of the numbers that are out there are 17%, some are as low as 7%, but we're somewhere between 7 and 20% of our population have dyslexia. And so what is dyslexia? What does that actually mean? Well, basically what we know about dyslexia has come really quick, really fast. We've had information about dyslexia since the 1600s. It was not called dyslexia, but it was this basically finding students or adults who are extremely intelligent or just of average intelligence, and for some reason they are not wired to read efficiently. And we didn't come across it that way, but that's where we are now, basically. In 1992, if you look up at that machine right there, that's an fMRI machine. In 1992, Yale and Harvard started using fMRIs to look at students who are reading and to be able to detect what neural pathways efficient readers are using when they read. And what we've learned is that A non-impaired reader, an efficient reader, will track predominantly on the left side of their brain. And what we now know is no longer theory, and scientists thought this for a long time. But then in 1992, we just started finding more concrete evidence through neuroscience that basically we are efficient readers utilizing the left side of their brain. And that is when you utilize the left side of your brain, you're much more fast at reading, you're a lot quicker at mathematical computation, and those types of things. What we know about students or adults that are not efficient readers, and a lot of them are dyslexic, we know that that left side of the brain does not light up with, well, and it's usually oxygen. When neurons are firing off, we see the oxygen, and that is on the left side of the brain. We do not see that quick, efficient reading. What we now know is that reading takes a much longer process along the right-hand side of the brain. And so that is our students who are dyslexic. Those are our adults who are dyslexic. And so what does that mean when we talk about dyslexia? Well, I will tell you it's lifelong impact. It affects reading, writing, spelling, and sometimes pronouncing words. Usually have difficulty with identifying separate speech sounds within a word or learning how letters represent sounds. And that's the early stages of dyslexia. Now, what does dyslexia look like as an adult? It looks a lot different. So we'll talk really quick just about some of the signs. In young children, it's usually they have articulation issues. As a teacher, I always knew that if you are not speaking by age 2, if you had delayed speech, that was a sign of dyslexia. And for my personal view, that is absolutely what we have found to be true. Delayed speech is a sign of dyslexia. I don't know how the "your" got in there. I don't know where that came from, sorry. Learning letters and their spoken sounds is a difficulty. Organizing written and spoken language, memorizing number facts, and not understanding math concepts, but how fast you are with the math concepts is a sign of dyslexia. Reading quickly enough, if you're having difficulty with that quick reading, that is a very large sign of dyslexia. Dyslexics have difficulty with foreign language, being able to get foreign languages more efficiently. Math operations, so you get the calculation, you understand the concepts of math very well, and a lot of times people say, you know, this child, I don't know what it is, she's having trouble in reading, but you know, we're also seeing this in math too, so she's probably got a math disability. Well, what we're finding is that really math disabilities are a very small population of our students. Most of those students are actually struggling with the dyslexia part of that affects math, and that is that memorization of math facts that helps us to be more efficient math learners, especially when it comes to multiplication and division. That's where most of our kids really struggle. Can they memorize? Yes, they can, but it's not easy, and some of our more profound dyslexics, it's obviously much more difficult. Remembering simple sequences, recognizing words that begin with the same sound, pronouncing difficulties. In an adult, basically a slow reader, someone who doesn't like to write a lot. Sometimes left-right confusion when you go to, you know, when someone says, oh, can you go grab the thing on the right-hand side, and you're automatically, oh yeah, it's over there. You know, that is a sign that those are all things that adults with dyslexia struggle with. Word retrieval. We also have several presidents who have been dyslexic, and I don't know if you can tell who they are just by some of the things that we've mentioned, but we have at least 8 or 9 presidents that have been dyslexic. The Bushes to be the last ones that I know of. Okay, so who can BEI help in Southern Maryland? Well, if you take a look at our most recent scores that have been going out in the Tri-County area, well, across the country actually, they're called PARC. They go along with Common Core, and they basically are showing what the NAEP scores have been showing for several years. And the NAEP was an international score that we've been looking at, and they kind of fall a little bit close to the NAEP scores. But basically it's called PARC, the PARC assessments, and as you can see, we are looking at students that are not meeting expectations. So I don't know how much publicity this got this year. It came out right before Christmas, and I think that was kind of intentional so that it wasn't so big that we noticed quite so much how our students were struggling. But when you take a look at how many students are not at proficiency, we would hope that this would be our proficient readers, but these are the readers that are actually not at proficiency. We look at 5 categories for reading. 5 is advanced, 4 is where we want all of our students to be, and then the first 3 are broken down into different categories. And these are the first 3 readers all tallied up in St. Mary's, Calvert, and Charles counties. And it basically talks about our scores.
Am I the only one who can't really read the percentages? We're specifically interested in St. Mary's.
So St. Mary's, yeah. So we're looking at in third.
Found the 1 in 5.
Yeah. So in St. Mary's County, we really looked at which children have been in Common Core since they were in kindergarten. And that is our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from last year. They've been in Common Core, they've had this, and this is a different test. Usually we create a test, and then we create the curriculum around the test. We try to do something different in this country, and it was a really great idea. We created the standards, and then people added lots of things to those standards. But the country standards, the Common Core standards, were created first this time, and then the test came after. So these students have been getting all of these concepts since they were in kindergarten. Now, yes, there are test glitches, there are little things with typing, there are all these little things that we have to work out. But that should be a pretty small percentage of students that are affected by those issues, or a small percentage on the test that should be affected. But we're still looking at so many students that are really reading below proficiency in this county. And 60% of 4th graders, 64% of 5th graders. In the Tri-County area, it averages out to 57.1%. But in St. Mary's, it's about 60%. So,
Lisa.
Sure.
Difference between Calvert
that's a great question.
Is significant. Why is there a difference?
So Charles has a much more diverse population than we do. They have a larger, more diverse population. Calvert has a lot of children that they put into special ed, and they're not in this group right here. And I will show you that does even out a little, and you'll see why. So, but it is a little bit better. But don't worry, there's not that much of a difference between Calvert County Public Schools and St. Mary's. I personally feel that St. Mary's County Public Schools are doing a really good job. And when you're looking at the state, these are actually very similar to state percentages. So we really do a pretty even job considering. Now, here we're looking at 504 students. Those were the students that were in that medical category in schools. Those are our students with ADHD or epilepsy or other medical health impairments that affect how they're performing in the school system. And a lot of times they get accommodations like extra time, or it may be something else that they may have, some other accommodations that they may get. In St. Mary's County, those numbers definitely go up. They went up from 8 to about 81%, 76%, so those start to get a little bit scarier. The next slide is our students in special education. These are our students who have qualified, who not only have a disability, but qualify enough to be struggling enough in school, and they get that category of special education. The numbers here are the ones that we really should be worried about, and we're looking in the 90s. So basically, if you are in special education, your chances of reading are extremely slim, that you will be a proficient reader. So in other words, children who go into special education to receive the extra help and the extra reading that they need are not getting that. So why is that? Well, there are a lot of reasons why, but one of the things I want you to remember is that that does not have to necessarily be true. What large longitudinal studies that came out in the 1980s have found is that 95% of children can be taught to read at a level constrained only by their reasoning and listening comprehension abilities. So basically, their intelligence is what is allowed. We can get students to read if their intelligence allows that. So, for example, most of our students who are dyslexic are at average to above average, as well as our ELL students or which are our English language learners who are speaking Spanish or come in with some other language influence, or they are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Those students, what we know, they do not have to fail at reading. We know that 95% of our students across the country can learn to read with the right intervention with a properly trained teacher, and that is definitely not an easy thing for our school system to do. We know we do not prioritize our education system with all of the things that they require, that they ask for, but they are, doing what they can with what they have now. Things are also starting to change because what we know about dyslexia is starting to trickle down a lot more now. But what does BEI offer? Well, we have a four-pronged system of things that we like to work on, and I'll go through those 4 prongs. Education and consultation. And that's basically when we have parents come through the door and say, I don't even know where to start. I have a child and he's struggling and I don't even know what it is. That's where we come in. We basically will sit down and we'll say, okay, what are they struggling with? Is it reading? Is it writing? Is it they're getting in trouble all the time? Is it they just hate school and they don't want to go? Because all of those things can be answered with whatever it is that the child is struggling with. We, so far, have not had anyone come in through our doors that we have not been able to find a reason why the things that are going on in their life, the things that are going wrong, why those can't be fixed. And so we do parent consultation, we do educational discussions. We've been to Howard County, Baltimore, we've been down here in St. Mary's. We do a lot of parent education or even just education throughout the community. Presentations, organization, partnerships, and awareness events, and we sponsor local support groups. Okay, help with IEPs and 504s. Understanding, so when parents come in and they go through the whole question part, then the next part is, do they need an IEP, which is special education, or maybe a 504 plan, which is that medical accommodation thing that we were talking about. They fit into that medical category where they just need something extra, a little bit of accommodation or something. We figure out where they are in that whole process, whether we need to start to help them off with the school system by starting letters and, here's how we get started in it, or we start to help to tweak with the school system. And we work really closely with the school system. We do what schools are not able to do, and that is, you get like a 40, 50-page pile of documents that go through all these evaluations for students. We will take a look at them and we analyze everything that comes through them, and we basically figure out what that student is really needing, based on their assessments, what they need, what they don't need, what sometimes they get anyways, and we try to find the happy medium in between. And sometimes that works perfectly in the school system, and sometimes that means going privately or asking for a private placement somewhere else in the county, or possibly up the road. But those are all the things that we go over, is about eligibility, whether they qualify, whether they're not going to qualify, whether they get help. IEP goals, we try to help make those goals better. We help students with accommodations, and if you're not sure what accommodations are, basically those are extra time in class that you get if you're processing a little slower. So dyslexia is a processing disability, and you will process a little slower, so having extra time is a huge thing. Sometimes extra time is not all it takes, though. Sometimes students also have a comorbid disability of dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is that process through the brain where it processes through the brain, and then you are actually writing whatever it is you see or whatever it is you're thinking, and sometimes that process is so slow that you're just having a hard time with that, so we will get a scribe for you, and that's someone who can either help you to write or using electronics to help you to write a little faster. So those are different types of accommodations. Another one is a reader. Sometimes when students are getting a specific intervention that is really important for them, they're not able to read yet. For example, I have an 11th grader who's reading on a 2nd grade reading level. There's no possible way he's going to show any information that he knows when he's reading at a 2nd grade reading level. So we need to get him up and reading at a higher level, knowing what what the content is in the social studies class that he's got. What is that he should be learning about, you know, going out into the world in a year or so. So those are some important things. Parent conferences we do, and we do classroom observations. Okay. We also have highly trained tutors who do the programs, because one of the things that we found is there was no one down here who was able to help our students who were not able to read. So we started a tutoring center as well. And that tutoring center is a specialized way to help students with dyslexia learn how to read. Now, you do not have to be dyslexic to find a lot of success with these programs, because our teachers are teaching a little bit different way than this way. So it's very productive. There's more comprehensive reading, writing programs. We also offer a much more substantial one for even our dyslexics. There's a huge spectrum. So our mild to moderate to severe can be serviced at our center, but our more profound students need even more specialized training, and we have that as well. Executive function coaching is a new big one, and those are students who have difficulty with focusing, time management, staying on task, remembering to turn in assignments. How do you stay organized so that you can do all of these things successfully? We do executive function coaching. We have math programs, and we have also any of the higher level math, like algebra, algebra 2, SAT, ACT prep, all of those different things, trig, calc. And those are our specialized services. And then we do teacher training. For all of the things that we talked about, we are working to try to be able to be a teacher training center in the state. Now, that's going to take a while. We are to the point where we can help students in all of these areas, but we want to be able to help the schools. We want to be the direct link down here. Instead of having them go to Rockville or New Jersey or Delaware, we want to be that center down here. And it's going to take time, but it's something that we feel is extremely important and will really be of direct interest to the school system here in St. Mary's County. As well, we are one of our executive functioning, we just talked to one of the principals over at Leonardtown, and we are working on having the executive function coaching training for the high school sometime this summer or in the fall. So we are already working on these partnerships. And how can you help? Well, I brought some flyers so that you can pass those out and spread the news about what we do. You can definitely help us with advertising. You know, anytime you know of anyone that may need something, an organization that may be interested in partnering with us, or that may want to help us in any way, you know, or we can help in any way. Obviously, those are the people we would like to be connected to. Obviously, becoming a financial partner or a volunteer. We have a lot of things because we are a new company and because we're so busy doing and helping our parents right now. We still need a little help with, you know, web design. Since we now have our nonprofit status, we can get all of these things. Web design, mailings, community outreach, advertising, and then we're looking for financial contributors on a regular basis as well. And that's basically what we are. And so I'd like to just say thank you, and thank you on behalf of our parents as well. So, and if you have any questions.